the wide range of skill set consisting of Azure, Kubernetes, Docker, Computer Vision, AWS, DevSpecOps, and so much more. CNCF stands for Cloud Native Compute Foundation, Kochi Community. Cloud native technologies empower organizations to build and run scalable applications in modern, dynamic environments such as public, private, and hybrid clouds. The Cloud Native Computing Foundation seeks to drive adoption of this paradigm by fostering and sustaining ecosystem of open source vendor neutral projects. We are so pleased that you accepted to take the session. Hope today will be a turning point for all of us. So welcome you to start the session.
Thank you, Rakesh. Thank you for giving an opportunity to speak with, talk in this edgy hack, 30 days of code. So I just have a quick check on my LinkedIn, what is this edgy hack? And I found it's kind of you guys are organizing a series of talks or webinars for students across Kerala mostly, but you guys are sharing it all over the world now, right? So I guess everyone is sitting home and it's they have everyone have a lot of time to learn more things out of the box rather than what we are learning from college, right? So yeah, you guys are making you guys are actually doing a great thing. You guys are not like everyone like you guys are not like bookworms. I would prefer to say that. So I was like this. I was when I was in college. I was like you guys, doing attending this kind of sessions and learning which are not there in our syllabus. Learning things which are not there in our syllabus and trying things and hacking things. So it's a great opportunity for me to address you all uh, to speak about the technology which I am working with now, which is Docker, Kubernetes mostly. So thanks Ragesh for the introduction and thanks for this opportunity to address you all. So I guess we have around 17 participants. Yeah, that's a quite good number. So yeah, let's start. I will just share my screen. So I guess you guys can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So, as Dagesh said, I'm part of CNCF Kochi Meetup Group, and so Dijish connected with me to deliver a talk on this Docker and Kubernetes for beginners, like for students. So I just said yes, and let's start. So Docker and Kubernetes for absolute beginners, 101. So the slide I don't have much, but I only have these three things, three slides on my deck. But I will show my console, show my terminal, and explain you everything on Docker basics and then Kubernetes and all the stuff. So the presentation outline is will be like this. I first I will be telling a story for all of you. Who doesn't like to hear a story, right? So I will be telling a story on this digital transformation, how things came up, like technologies like Docker and Kubernetes. Is it really needed? Is it was really needed, or what is the need for it? I will just explain those concepts. It's a really good story to listen. Whoever is so passionate about technology, they will love that. So I will start with that story. Then we'll take you to Docker basics, and we will have a small Q&A. And if time permits, then we will do Kubernetes basics also today itself. Otherwise, we will just stop with the Docker basics and Q&A today, and we can do Kubernetes maybe tomorrow evening, same time. If the slot is available, I will check with the coordinators and let you guys know. So let me start. So like around 10 or 15 years before, like let's take an example of a online uh, online newspaper company, or e-commerce was not there that time, I guess, like 15 years before there was like online e-commerce and other stuffs were just getting started. So let's take an example of online news portal or e-paper. So at that point of time, how they deploy their online application, like that newspaper application was like on traditional way of deployment. They will deploy that on a server. They will maybe they will size it to like they will add like 8 GB of RAM or uh, two cores of processor or four cores of processor. Later, after 2 years of implementing that infrastructure and deploying their application, they will get a lot of hit. Maybe later, after 2 years, more people start using more devices. Like everyone bought mobile phone, or everyone bought like laptops or computers. So they started getting more hits from internet. So in order to accommodate every users, like to provide better quality of service for every users, they increase the size of those servers. Basically, they will increase the RAM and CPU cores, right? So they will just add more RAMs and add more CPU cores to that infrastructure. They will just scale it vertically. They will add more computational and memory resources to that particular server. So then they needed this thing, the reliability they needed. Why? Like if that one server is going down, no one will be able to reach out to their portal and see things, right? So at, they wanted to implement that reliability at that point of time, and they added then the concept called load balancer came up, and then um, they managed it by adding more similar servers to their environment. So there will be a load balancer sitting in front of the backend to application servers. So the traffic will hit directly to the load balancer, and from the load balancer, it will go to the backend servers where the actual application is deployed. So that's how it all started. Traditional era, traditional era of application deployment. Later, after a few years, when people are more active, when people got more active on internet, more traffic uh, came in, and the traffic surge, like it was not like every time the traffic is there. It's like sometimes when there is some hot news is there on their website, at that point of time people want to read about that news. It's like a big billion day on Flipkart, right? So whenever there is a huge lot of traffic, they were not able to manage it with that traditional servers. If they want to manage it, they have to size it, like they have to increase the RAM or computational resources like CPU furthermore, right? That is if you ask me if that is possible or not, yeah, that is possible. But when there are no such hot news or some that kind of news is going on in their website, and the traffic will be very less. The terms maybe only 8 GB of RAM or 2 GB or 4 GB of RAMs will be actively used. So it's a worst case scenario. In the worst case scenario, the traffic will go high, and the resource utilization will go high. The servers can go down. So the reliability or the quality of service, it got affected. It got affected really badly. So later, this virtualization concept, that virtualization era came up. At that point of time, everything is running on VM instead of running on a normal server hardware or a normal bare metal hardware. Now, later, after maybe 5 years from this application got deployed, this virtualization technology came up. So I'm talking about this journey of a customer who is digitally transforming, who is getting digitally transformed in each pace of time, right? So initially they started with the physical hardware and deployed their application on top of that, and they added the load balancer concept into it, and they managed to provide resiliency using that load balancer itself, and size the servers accordingly with the worst case, considering the worst case scenario. In worst case, how much it may need to take that the business people take that decision, and they size the infrastructure accordingly, the memory, CPU, and all the stuff, storage, and all those things. And later, after 5 years, this virtualization concept came up. So, in virtualization, it is also like we can add more RAM or add more CPU virtually to the virtual machine, right? So in a single physical host on a single rack server, we can have multiple VMs running on. So uh, yeah, so this newspaper application, they started hosting it on a VM, and suddenly they wanted to update um, the application to a different version, right? They wanted to add a new feature to the newspaper application. Currently, maybe that application might be running on Java 5 and MySQL 6 or something. And later, when the new feature was adding, they used this Java version, latest version of Java at that point of time, and latest version of MySQL at that point of time. So it needed a downtime to redeploy that application to the production because they needed to upgrade the Java version and MySQL version, and then do minor configuration changes and all those stuff. So that is one thing, and also like if the company itself have a different application needs to be hosted on that particular server, on that particular VM, which is running on a different Java version, it is not possible because it will make a conflict. Our newspaper application is running on Java 5, and the other application running might be running on Java 6 and MySQL different version. And if we blindly go and deploy this application and upgrade Java and MySQL to support this application, our new application, the old application will get affected and it will go down. So they wanted to spin up another VM and deploy that application. But if you ask me, like, is the newspaper application is taking all of the resources which we are allocated all the time? No, right? So it can also run the other application in the same VM, which only take less amount of compute or RAM. But that is not possible because it is developed in a different tech stack or of a different Java version or a MySQL version. So this dependency is kind of getting conflicted, and we cannot deploy different applications of different Java versions of different MySQL version or whichever runtime it is, like Python, Node, whatever it is. So that problem persisted until uh, until we got containers. So that is how we need a container. It provides us an isolated space. It provides us an isolated space for running our application, right? For scaling a VM, if you ask me whether it is easy, yeah, that is easy, but it is a heavyweight. Scaling of VMs are easy, and scaling of containers are also easy. But the difference is the VM, it is not sharing the same kernel, but containers running on the same physical machine, physical server. Let's say I am running a VirtualBox on my laptop, and I have to install I can run Windows or the Linux like Ubuntu, Fedora, everything on my laptop in VirtualBox. So if you look at it, it is going to take some amount of your RAM and most of your storage and most of your CPU. So it is kind of heavyweight. And if I am gonna run an Ubuntu container in my laptop, it is not going to take that much amount of storage, memory, or CPU. So it is more lightweight when it is compared to virtual machines. So that's how the story of Docker containers. In between, some other things are also there, like cloud was there after VMs. Cloud came into the picture, and people started moving to cloud, and they were getting these features such as advantages such as horizontal scaling, right? Horizontally scaling is something which we like something which can be very useful for this kind of newspaper application. When there's a heap, they can scale horizontally instead of scaling vertically, adding more RAM or adding more CPU. Instead, they will just replicate the same VM to a different VM and redirect the traffic to that VM, and they will increase that number of VMs when there is more traffic, and they will just scale out when there is like less traffic. No, scale in when there is less traffic. In that way, it is more cost effective, and they can run in long run. It is going to be very cost effective for that customer, right? And they don't even to manage that infrastructure. Everything will be managed by the cloud provider. So yeah, so from the traditional deployment, then on the VM, on cloud, and now on container, and for managing containers, we have Kubernetes. So when we move this containers, like when we move these applications to containers, people started writing a lot of applications. Like people started disintegrating these monolithic applications to microservices. So let me tell you what is a monolithic application. Monolithic application is nothing but everything written to a single file, or everything written as a single application. Uh, for example, if this newspaper application is a single jar file, and if it has a single backend, a database, then it's a monolithic application. So if people are going to log in, log out, or if people are going to watch latest videos or latest news, uh, all the section like sports or international news, all these sections are directly getting or directly served from a single application, then that is called a monolithic application. So if you want to deploy it as a microservice application, we will segregate, or we will just modularize this application based on the functionality. Like for international news page, maybe a different team will be working on that part. So we will allocate them to develop that application itself. And for login, logout, we will create a different application. For sports page, we will create a different application. And for all these uh, functionalities, we will modularize it. Like we will decouple the monolithic structure to different small application, and we will allocate a small team to create or build that application and manage that application. So basically, it is not like it is not necessary that every team should be stick to a single technology stack, right? So if we have a small modules in a monolithic application, we can just disintegrate into four microservices and assign four teams to do that, and they have the freedom to choose what technology they should use and which version of those runtime or whatever they need to use, because we are gonna run that on containers. In containers, we will be packaging the application OS and the basic libraries, dependencies, and everything to a container file. So
Hello, Vishnu. Hello. Hello, Vishnu.
Hello.
Yeah, okay.
Somehow my mic got muted. Fine. So I can see some questions also in the chat. We will skip that to the Q&A session. I will explain more about these things. Yeah, fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So what I was talking about was decoupling monolithic applications to microservices and how they become headache for the system admins or infrastructure or operation team who actually manage the application which are deployed in production. So when people started disintegrating this monolithic application, they had many microservices. They ended up in creating many microservices. So previously, that operation team might only need to manage a single application, and after decoupling it, after we decoupled it, that decoupling is actually necessary for the agility or velocity for the team to build that can increase the velocity of the development team who is building this application, adding more features or releasing more features. So when that happened, when there was a single application, now it is kind of like 20-25 applications. So the same system admin or the operation teams needed to manage this much amount of application, like 20-25 amount of applications, and all are containerized. So they had to manage 20-25 containers instead of managing one single application or one single container. So at large scale, when this kind of things are happening, like when there's a DDoS attack is happening, or when there is a huge amount of traffic is going to come to your application, if large amount of traffic is coming to the sports page, then that particular module, that particular application needs to be scaled to be hundreds or thousands of containers. So it got difficult for a single person or a single operations team to manage this much amount of containers. So that's what Kubernetes do. Kubernetes make that life more easier. Management of container, so that make it more easier. That I will talk about that more in coming, like maybe after telling more about the Docker and its basics and all the stuffs. So I have created me and Dijish have created this documentation for you guys on GitHub. Hope you guys can see the screen.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So this is what I was talking about. So this is the old way of deploying application. There will be a single physical server, and on that physical server there will be a host operating system and a hypervisor and VM. In VM there will be another OS and the application running. So it kind of actually using up all the memory resources and all the stuff. Now here in containers, host operating system, then Docker runtime, then any number of containers we can run. It basically uses most of the libraries from the host operating system itself. Basically, Docker is kind of process isolation. We'll create a process. When we deploy an application, it is actually a process gonna. It's kind of only a process which is going to be running at uh, the backend, right? So if it is an application, then it's gonna if an application is running, then it's a process which is running in your server. So each container application, it is kind of a process only. So Docker is the one who isolate that process, seeing each other or taking each other resources like CPU, memory. It's all bounded. Like if we can specify this container only request for 1 GB or RAM or two cores of CPU. So that is bounded, and the networking, everything is kind of bounded. We can control it even though it is sharing the host operating system. So basically they have their own file system. They cannot see each other processes. Their computational resource usage can be bounded. We can control it. Yeah, and one more different is that we cannot take it to anywhere. Like we cannot like an VM image which is built on this hypervisor. We cannot. We should not. We won't be able to run it on a cloud provider or somewhere. But this container image, if it is built on Linux, it can run on any Linux platform. So we can easily migrate that to any cloud or OS distribution. So let's get started with the Docker. Yeah. So if you guys have a Linux machine or Windows machine, doesn't matter at all. OS doesn't matter. If you have Docker installed, you can do these things along with me. Yeah. Can you see my terminal window?
Yeah.
So I will we all started learning programming with that hello world message. So I will just do the same. We can run our first uh, Docker container with the hello world image. Hello hyphen world. Basically, what this command do is when we are running Docker run hello world, that hello world image, Docker image, it try to look at the local system in my local laptop. It will try to look at. If it is not there, then it will pull it from the Docker repository. Docker repository is the place where we keep all our Docker images. It's similar to GitHub, where we place our codes. So once we have built the Docker image, we can keep it somewhere and we can version it. So Docker repo or Docker Hub is the default one. Docker Hub is the default one where you can keep. It's kind of the it's a public repo, and you can create an account in Docker Hub and start pushing your custom build containers to the Docker Hub and make it available for everyone. And it is free. Like you can store any number of Docker images, your Docker images to Docker Hub. So you can see here, hello from Docker. So it's a message print to HTTP out from this uh, Docker image, hello world image. So how Docker works, I will now explain basic architecture of Docker. So what you just see my or see what you just saw on my screen, like Docker run hello world, right? So I executed this Docker run command. So basically Docker run in that Docker is a CLI client application which I installed on my laptop. Don't get confused it with the Docker daemon, and Docker client application and Docker daemon application is different. It's not kind of a same application. So Docker daemon is the one uh, who is responsible to manage the images which are there locally. Like I executed this command Docker run hello world through my Docker client, right? And Docker daemon listened to that command and checked whether that hello world is there in these images which are available locally or not. If it is not available locally on my laptop, it tried to pull it from the Docker registry, Docker Hub, right? It just pulled and stored it locally and started the container, right? So the Docker daemon is responsible to manage the local images and the state of the running containers. So as I said, Docker engine uses Linux kernel namespaces and control group. Like there is Docker enabled us to isolate each process, seeing each other, and all the stuff I said earlier. So how it is implemented? It is using Linux. It is using the capabilities of Linux kernel namespaces and control groups. So basic terminologies: Docker image. That hello world was a Docker image which I pulled from Docker Hub. You can also try it now, like Docker run hello hyphen world. It will just pull the image and run the Docker container in your local machine. So it's basically a read-only file with OS, libraries, and apps. It is not exactly entire OS. It's a base OS, which is only necessary to run this libraries and application. Most of the things will be shared from the actual physical host, shared from my laptop host. So yeah, as I said, anyone can create a Docker image and you can put that to Docker Hub, and anyone can download it and use it. So in enterprises, we once we build the Docker images, we keep it on a private registry, not in Docker Hub. Docker Hub we also have private registry, but we won't use. It's not like we want to use. Sorry, like we in each enterprises they will have different applications for building private registry. There is one from Red Hat which is called Quay, QUAY, and in Azure, there is one Docker registry, and AWS also we have easier Elastic Container Registry. In Azure, it is ACR, Azure Container Registry. So we mostly people go with those solution. Like most enterprises customers will have either of Azure or AWS or Red Hat uh, and things similar to that.
Vishnu,
Yes,
hello. Can you copy the link in the chat, please?
yes, I will. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I will just take you through some Docker command. So Docker search command can be used like instead of going to Docker Hub and searching for a Docker image, you can just do using the Docker client. So WP scan images are available from this many repos, as you can see over here. So let me search for Nginx. So Nginx is also available from this many repos, right? Then list all containers, Docker PS will list all containers which are running. So I have this many containers which are running. So basically, these are kind of like I do POCs, like I experiment things actually with containers. So and I like it was like 9 months ago. Like I created these containers and it is still running like about an hour. Okay, about an hour. I just started the Docker daemon, and when I started Docker daemon, all these containers also got started. So as I said, Docker daemon is a person who makes sure your container is up and running. So I have Harbor images running on my pod 808. So cool. Yeah. Then list all. Okay. If you pass the flag ps-a, then you can see the stopped containers as well. Yeah. So I have this many exited, which are stopped containers. This all things were 9 months before. So as I said, it's almost been 1 year. I'm running Docker commands again. Um, I build Docker images, that's it. But Docker and Docker PS, all these things I'm doing again now. Because before 9 months, I was doing everything on Docker, and later, till now, I am using Kubernetes for everything. So it's kind of 1 year. I left Docker and start embracing Kubernetes. Okay, so if you want to run a container interactively, suppose you build an image and you want to get into that and see whether everything is running or not. So you just need to do this Docker run minus IT interactively. Um, let's say Ubuntu. So this Ubuntu image it will just download if it is not available in my laptop from Docker Hub and run process bash in it. Okay, so I got to bash pwd slash, right. So this is how now I am standing inside the Docker container. I can do anything from here. I can start. I can just run or start. I can do anything from inside the container, right? Now I'm just exiting from the container. So the container exited, and the container is not running now. Then list all images that Docker images command will do. So if you want to see what all images which I have downloaded already, you can see here there are many, right? Uh, okay, so I have this many images downloaded. I have this many images downloaded. This is a Ubuntu one. If you look here, it is like only 64.2 MB, right? If you are gonna run, uh, if you are going to run an Ubuntu VM, it will be, it will be around 2 to 3 or 4 GB. It will use the storage and it will use up a lot of RAM and CPU for running the OS itself. So now it's just 64 MB and it won't use much that much amount of CPU or RAM for running this particular container. That's the advantage of Docker when we compare it with virtual machine. So run a container in detached mode. So it is basically now when I was running a container, I will show you. I'm removing this minus b. Minus b is the flag which we use for run it detached. So Docker run dash dash name. I'm giving the container name. Then I'm giving the uh, giving the image name and the image tag. Image tag is latest. I'm downloading Alpine. So Alpine is one of the smallest, very smallest container image which you can use as a base image to deploy your application. When you write Docker files to build your Docker image, you can use Alpine, which is very lightweight. It's kind of 1 MB, something like that. So so I will just rename it. Container 2. Docker run direction name pin container. Then latest, this is the process which is gonna be running inside that Alpine container. The in pin container 2, this will be the process which is gonna run. See, so this is actually printing from the container itself. I will just. Oh, okay. It will be keep on running if I do Docker ps. Where is it? So it both exited, right? Okay, even if it is exited, we need to either delete it or rename it. So I'm gonna remove it. Docker aram yeah, pin container to it will just do ping 5 times and exit the container, right? So right now I'm not able to do anything once I was running the container, right? So basically I need this process to I need to send this process to the background. I don't want to see it, right? So that can be done using the detach flag. This is dash D. again. Sorry, I had to remove that again. I removed it. So it went to run in background. Um, grab in container. It 27 seconds ago. It got exited after five uh, 5 times. It pinged localhost and it got exited. Right. So are you guys following with me? Like, are you guys doing things with me? This running commands with me, or okay? Let's continue, and I guess we will talk more during Q&A session. Like, we'll discuss more on Q&A session. Yeah. Okay, live tail logs inside a container. So, like, mostly when we deploy container, as I said, like, it will be running on a detached mod. So I'm making it 50. Docker and name 2 and 50. Yeah. So it is running in background. If I want to see those logs, Docker logs -f ping container 2. So these are the logs which are getting populated inside the container, which is running in detached mode, right? So it will just print 50 times, and the container will stop. It will just exit. Yeah. So that's all about logs. Yeah. Then port forwarding. So I'm gonna run Nginx. Nginx is kind of a load, basically a load balancer. Middleware is a load balancer, which I will explain more about load balancer in the Q&A. So we'll skip that for now. So Docker run in detached mode. This Nginx will be running, and I have a new flag -p here, which is for specifying the port. So that port value should be given before we give the Nginx give the image name. So basically, Nginx will be running in port 80 inside the container, and 8080. I'm telling bind my local 8080 to the container port 80. So whenever I hit 8080 on my local host, it will be forwarded to port 80 of this Nginx container. So we'll just go and look at localhost 8080. Yes, you guys can see my localhost 8080, and welcome to Nginx page of the default Nginx installation. I will just remove that. So I stopped it and I removed it. So if I look over here, you won't get anything, right? So nothing is running on, nothing is got binded on port 8080, or nothing is not running on port 8080 on my local laptop. Yeah. So that's how we do port forwarding. basically binding the my local port 8080 to the container port 80. Whatever traffic which I receive on my local host 8080 will be forwarded to 80, and the response will be given back from the container port 80. So list volumes, Docker volume ls. So you can see there are a lot of volume which I have created. So you can basically attach a directory uh, into the container. Like if you have an application, if you have a web application, then like if there is a static folder where you have the CSS images or JavaScript, then you can put that to your local system or a physical host on a particular directory, and mount that directory inside the containers which you are creating, right? So basically you can mount a directory to your Docker container. Docker network ls tool, and this command is basically for listing your network interfaces and or network ls. Yeah, so for each containers, it will be creating different networks. So you can see it by running this command docker network else. So this inspecting a container image, it will basically give very low level information of the Docker objects. We'll just do, I'll just show you how for Nginx Alpine. So you can see here, you have all the information on Docker image. So what is it is running? So it is running nginx minus g daemon of like bin ss-c hashnock and cmd this command. So if you want to inspect a Docker image, like to see what is it is running inside the container, that you can do using Docker inspect command. So like if you got a malicious Docker image, you can try inspecting this using Docker inspect command and see what all things are getting, what all things are running inside that particular container. So as I said earlier, the history, like we can do of a versioning for a Docker image. So if you want to see it, you can use Docker history command. Right. So stopping and removing a container that I already showed you. So Docker stop and container name, and Docker remove Docker rm, then container name. So I talked a little bit about namespaces. Um, so basically, namespace is the thing which we are like namespace is a feature of our Linux kernel, and we are utilizing the namespaces to isolate each process, right? So each process for each process which are spawned by container, Docker creates a PID, a network, a net namespace, an IPC namespace, MNT namespace, UTS, and user namespace. So PID is of course it's for process isolation. Net namespace is for managing network interfaces. IPC for inter-process communication management. Then MNT for managing file system mount points. UTS for different host and domain names. Then user namespace for like to manage user ID, group ID, and all. Like if you are running the application as a different user inside the container for managing those kind of stuffs, um, like they are using user namespace of Linux kernel. So this is all about. It's not all about. It is very basic on Docker containers, like Docker client maybe, right? So I showed almost all the commands which we use in our day-to-day life to build, create, or manage uh, Docker containers. So, yeah, I will also show you like how to create a Docker image. Sorry, I forgot that. But, so as informed by my by the coordinators, like mostly the audience for this workshop will be students who will be like first year, second year, third year, fourth year studying like for engineering students, right? So I created one small application without any user interface, like without any beautiful UI. It's just like when we upload an image, it will tell us what is there in that image, right? Like kind of image classification. There is something called Inception from Google, Inception model from Google. So that I'm using that uh, model for classifying the image which we upload, right? So I created a small Flask application for that. It's nothing much. So I created a small Flask application on for that, and it's running on what 8080. So if I run it locally, it will run. So I containerized it. I created a Docker file to build the image. So there was one base image by FB Cotter on Docker TensorFlow, and like there was one image with the TensorFlow and OpenCV already. So I am just using it as the base image. So this frembird, like I'm telling, from this base image, run an apt update, then make a /app work directory, add requirement.txt from my local. So these are my requirements. So add requirements.txt from my local to the created /app. Just add that file there. Then do a run pib3 install dash get upgrade Python. After that, run pip3 install -r /app requirements.txt. So basically, it will install all the dependencies of that Python applications. These are the dependencies. It needs Flask, TensorNets, Unicorn, it's dangerous, Jinja2, Markup Safe, and Vexic. So all these modules and all these packages with these versions will be installed on the Docker image. Okay, and add everything on this like add everything from this directory where I'm standing. That's why I put dot to /app. Then port 8080. First Python 3 init underscore TensorNets.py. It is kind of like initializing the weights and everything. It will do that part. It will just download inception that inception weight file, and then I made entry point Python 3, and then I'm just doing cmd Python app.py should be. I guess I miswrote it. Python 3 Entry point should be Python app.py. It should be like this. So entry point is the part, like entry point is the process which is gonna run on that container. So yeah, once the weights are downloaded and initialized, it will then run by app.py. App.py basically the Flask application, right? So I will try building it. I created this file almost a year before. I will just try building it for you guys. CD. So the command for building the image from Docker file is, I guess this screen size is little small. Docker build minus e test image. I'm tagging it as latest. Then dot. From here, I want to build test image and tag it as latest. That is what I meant by this command. So it's installing all the dependencies and everything. So it's going to take a while. Hold on. I guess it's gonna take a while. It's around 615 MB this image itself, because um, that inception file is much little much bigger, I guess. Okay, it's done. Now I'm doing Docker run dash name um, demo app dash p 8080. The application is also running in 8080. Then test image. So I guess okay. So the for that image which I just built now, might be some problems because of the dependencies, like NB floating is deprecated. Okay, so I believe I have that image already pushed to my Docker Hub very before. Oh yeah, I have this over here. So I have it over here. I will be just using this to run that application. Run me demo app. P is 0, colon is 0. I am demo app. This time it should work because this image was pushed a year ago, so it should work. Yeah, so it's downloading the weights. Before coming into Docker or infrastructure, I was more into AI and things. So Inception was the one thing which I researched a lot. It's all about image classification, but I made that thing to do audio classification. So image classification, like audio classification using image classification techniques. There is a paper which I published a lot before. Yeah, so the application is running on port 8080. Let's put it. Yeah, application is running. So I'm uploading a sample image. It's a cat. Let's see whether it's a cat or not. Did it got the heat? Tabby, yeah, tiger cat. Tabby is the type of that cat, and instead of saying it's a cat, it's telling us it's tabby. I guess tabby is the type of the cat. Yeah, yes, working. Still, it's working. Cool. So that's how we build the image and arrange on a container, right? So that's all about the demo. Yeah, that's all about the demo. So if you guys have any questions on this part, Docker, you guys can ask now. So do you guys have any questions?
Hello.
Yes, Ragesh.
Okay. Amal PS has asked a question. To what extent a beginner can install and try out Docker slash Kubernetes in his personal computer? Is it heavy? How can we get affordable cloud hosting?
Okay. So basically Docker, like if you want to run a Docker container, you might need at least 4 GB of RAM, right? So that would be enough for you to start with Dockers. And if you want to try your Kubernetes, you can install Minikube or Kind to your laptop and try out things. So at least 4 GB. The recommended is 8 GB. At least 4 GB of RAM is required. To start with Kubernetes, you can use Minikube or Kind. Yeah.
Like, hello?
Yes.
Okay. Kubernetes famous for being a bit complicated for beginners, right? So which are some resources that you recommend for us?
Kubernetes documentation is the great place. Is a great place to start, and there are some like from Kelsey Hightower. Kubernetes the hard way thing is that I will just show it.
Okay.
GitHub Kubernetes the hardware. So as you guys are aware, Google Cloud provide $300 for an year, I guess. So you guys can try creating a Kubernetes cluster from scratch, right? Kubernetes cluster from scratch following this tutorial. So you will understand all these things like how is the networking things work, how the TLS certificates, CA certificates, what is control plane, what is worker node, and what all daemons or processes are running on a worker node and a control plane, and that kind of things. Everything you will learn at an infra level, how to manage the cluster. That kind of thing you learn by implementing it.
Okay. Then Rahul Chandra has asked a question. Could you explain a bit more about load balancer?
Load balancers. Okay,
Yeah.
yeah. So load balancer is basically it's a middleware. It stands between the end user and the actual application. So a load balancer is a necessity when you want to ensure the reliability of your application. If you're deploying your application on a single container, no, not a single container, sorry, on a single server, if that server goes down, uh, the customer or the end user might not be able to use that application, right? Instead of
Hmm.
that, what people what they will do is they will create two instances to run your application, and in front of that they will place a load balancer, right? And this load balancer will route traffic to um, application A server and application B server, right? So the traffic will be going equally to both the servers, and both the servers uh, um, like serve the application. So if one goes down, the other serves. If the other goes down, the other one will be there. If both of them goes down, then the application is down. So it's only like a very less chance for the applications, both of the server goes down. So it is for maintaining the high reliability of application.
Okay.
Yep. Nginx is an example for a load balancer actually, which you guys can look at. So did you find any more questions? So if that's it, like it's almost 9:23 now. Like I might not be able to finish uh, things in like 30 minutes on Kubernetes part. If I can do that, but if you want to explore more on that, like we did for Docker, then we can do that maybe later on a later session.
Like, can we do it for tomorrow?
Yes, yeah, we can do that.
Okay. So organizers will contact you for a free time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So Vishnu, thank you for teaching us the basics of Kubernetes and docking and Dockers.
Mhm.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing there isn't any more questions. So I guess we can wind up the session.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, then thanks. Thank you guys for joining.
Thank you.